Maxwell Hayes had a smile that could make the stock market crash in Wall Street if he wanted to. Unfortunately, that smile was currently aimed at him, and Owen Carter, the last person Maxwell expected to notice him, was staring back, eyes wide like a kid caught stealing candy. Owen, a rare Omega with soft brown hair that looked almost luminescent under the sunset, had always gone unnoticed in the whirlwind of Manhattan's high life. Maxwell didn't chase, he commanded. But something about Owen's quiet resilience, the way he moved through the chaos of the city without breaking stride, had caught Maxwell off guard. He wasn't used to wanting something that didn't already bend to his will, and yet here he was, standing on his penthouse balcony, feeling like a teenager who had just been caught doodling hearts in a notebook. "I think you're staring," Owen said, voice tinged with amusement but layered with suspicion. He hugged his arms, a subtle shield that Maxwell found irresistible. Maxwell smirked, leaning casually against the railing. "Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just enjoying the view." He gestured toward the city, but Owen could see through the lie. Maxwell's gaze wasn't on the skyline, it was on him. Owen's heart thumped audibly in his chest, a rare anomaly for someone so guarded. As an Omega, Owen had learned the art of self-preservation early, blending into the background, avoiding attention that could complicate his quiet life. But Maxwell's presence was like a storm rolling over the Hudson Unignorable, overwhelming, inevitable. "You're very confident for someone who's barely introduced himself," Owen said, a smirk tugging at his lips despite his nervousness. He hated how Maxwell made him feel exposed, like the rest of the world could vanish, leaving just the two of them in a bubble that smelled faintly of expensive cologne and New York air. Maxwell laughed, low and dangerous, a sound that vibrated in Owen's chest. "Confidence comes with necessity, but I'll make an exception for you. You're not like the others." Owen raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. He had been approached countless times, but never with this intensity. Most alpha men in New York either wanted status, beauty, or a mix of both. Maxwell, however, seemed different, focused, deliberate, like he could see straight into Owen's soul and read every line he had carefully written in his private, controlled life. The tension between them was electric, a current running too strong to ignore. Owen's pulse raced, and Maxwell noticed, of course. He always noticed. "Why me?" Owen asked quietly, almost as if saying it aloud would make it less real. "Because," Maxwell said, stepping closer, reducing the distance to a mere whisper of space between them, "you're the first Omega who didn't run when the world tried to swallow him whole." Owen felt a warmth bloom in his chest, confusing and delightful all at once. He wanted to retreat, to remind himself that CEOs like Maxwell Hayes didn't chase Omegas-owned industries, not hearts. Yet he didn't move away. He couldn't. The city around them faded into background noise. Distant horns, the murmur of nightlife, the soft pulse of the skyline. It was just the two of them, a precarious closeness charged with unspoken words, stolen glances, and the hint of something neither wanted to name yet. "You know this is dangerous, right?" Owen murmured, a shiver running down his spine despite the warm summer air. Maxwell tilted his head, eyes dark and intent. "Dangerous." He paused, letting the word hang like smoke between them. "Maybe, but sometimes, the best things in life are worth the risk." Owen's stomach twisted, a mixture of fear and anticipation. He had lived by caution, by invisibility, for too long. But Maxwell's presence was an invitation to challenge Ito step out of the shadows, to embrace something reckless and real. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready. Owen hadn't expected to run into Maxwell again so soon, not in the bustling chaos of Soho's art gallery scene. The room buzzed with music and laughter, the air thick with paint fumes and perfume. But Owen's eyes found Maxwell immediately. The CEO stood near a contemporary piece, wine glass in hand, exuding effortless dominance. And then, as if by instinct, their eyes locked across the crowded room. Maxwell's lips quirked upward. "I see you didn't disappear like a good little Omega should." Owen felt heat rise to his cheeks, irritation and something far more dangerous swirling together. "I don't disappear," he said, voice steadier than he felt. Maxwell's gaze softened just slightly, a flicker that made Owen's pulse quicken. I know. That's why you're interesting. Every word Maxwell spoke was a calculated melody, each note designed to pull Owen closer while keeping him guessing. Owen hated how much he liked it. He hated how much his heart wanted to lean in, despite the rational voice screaming that CEOs like Maxwell didn't have room for someone like him in their lives. Interesting doesn't mean invincible, Owen replied, scanning the gallery nervously. He didn't want to admit the truth that Maxwell's attention made him feel both protected and exposed, vulnerable yet alive. Maxwell laughed softly, a sound that seemed to vibrate straight through Owen's chest. I don't expect you to be invincible. Just be yourself. That's more than enough. Owen blinked, caught off guard. He had spent his entire life hiding, pretending, surviving. And here was Maxwell, the most powerful alpha in New York, asking him to simply exist, to be himself. It was terrifying, and yet undeniably thrilling. The night stretched on, filled with stolen glances and the subtle brush of hands as they moved through the crowd. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and utterly new for Owen. And as Maxwell's hand finally brushed against his, the smallest touch that carried the weight of promises unspoken, Owen realized he had crossed an invisible line. There was no turning back now. Owen's apartment was small, cozy, a haven of order and calm amidst the chaos of Manhattan life. He didn't invite people in easily, especially not someone like Maxwell Hayes. And yet, here he was, heart hammering as he led the CEO through the door, unsure if he was stepping into danger or the start of something beautiful. Maxwell didn't rush. He took in the space, his sharp eyes softened with something Owen couldn't quite name. Then, as if the moment demanded it, Maxwell closed the distance between them, just enough that Owen could feel the heat radiating off him. You don't have to pretend, Maxwell whispered, voice low and intimate. Not here, not with me. Owen's breath hitched. He had spent so long pretending to be untouchable, unremarkable, invisible. But Maxwell's gaze stripped away every layer, leaving him raw, trembling, exposed in the most vulnerable way. Owen began, but words failed him. Maxwell's fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from his face, soft as a whisper, grounding him in a reality that felt both impossible and perfect. You're rare, Owen, Maxwell said. And I don't want to waste time. Time. The word sent a thrill through Owen's veins. Time to be held, time to be wanted, time to be more than just a shadow in the bustling city. He let himself lean in just a fraction, testing the waters. Maxwell's hand moved to cup his cheek, thumb brushing tenderly over skin that had rarely felt such care. And then, finally, their lips met, not rushed, not forced, but a careful collision of longing and promise. The city lights flickered beyond the window, the hum of New York fading into insignificance. For the first time in his life, Owen felt seen, really seen. And as Maxwell's hand settled at the small of his back, drawing him closer, Owen realized that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found a place where he belonged. Owen couldn't stop the grin spreading across his face as he remembered the first time Maxwell had truly looked at him. The CEO had power, influence, wealth, but with Owen it was different. Here, there were no contracts, no shareholders, no expectations, just two hearts learning to beat in tandem amidst the chaos of New York. Maxwell, for his part, had never believed in rare omegas until Owen. Every calculated move in the boardroom, every commanding speech, every ruthless business decision melted away when Owen was near. Maxwell discovered, much to his own surprise, that strength wasn't only in control, it was in trust, in vulnerability, in allowing someone else to see your flaws and still choose to stay. The city below continued to pulse, relentless and sprawling. But up here, on this small balcony, the world shrank to the distance between them. Hands intertwined, shoulders brushing, laughter shared in quiet moments away from the glaring lights of Manhattan society. Owen realized that life as a rare omega in a city that thrived on anonymity could be terrifying. Yes, but it could also be magical. Especially when someone like Maxwell chose to see you, to protect you, to love you not for what you could offer, but for simply being yourself. And as they stood together, Watching the sunset paint the skyline in fire and gold, Owen let out a soft sigh of contentment. Maybe this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The days that followed their first encounter were a whirlwind for Owen. Every text, every glance, every accidental brush of fingers in the hallways of Manhattan felt loaded with meaning. Maxwell had a way of appearing unexpectedly, yet always with purpose. Owen found himself hyper-aware of his surroundings, anticipating Maxwell's presence in ways that were both thrilling and exhausting. It started with small things. Maxwell would leave a single coffee on Owen's desk, carefully arranged with a note that reads something as simple as, "Thought you might need this." Or he would appear at the cafe Owen frequented on weekends, pretending it was coincidental. Yet Owen never truly believed in coincidence anymore. Not with Maxwell. Owen's friends began to notice. They asked about his distracted smiles, the way he seemed lighter, happier, yet somehow tense. He couldn't tell them about Maxwell Hayes, certainly not the CEO who could move markets with a word. That kind of attraction was dangerous, unspoken, forbidden in its own way. The tension was both a thrill and a burden. Owen's Omega instincts clashed with his desire for independence. Being rare meant he was naturally attuned to other alphas, often instinctively avoiding the power that came with them. Yet with Maxwell there was no instinctive recoil, only fascination and fear. One evening, as a light rain fell over the city, Owen found himself walking through Central Park, a hoodie pulled tight against the chill, hoping the quiet might clear his mind. But quiet didn't last long. Maxwell's silhouette appeared beneath a street lamp, umbrella in hand, as if he had been waiting specifically for this moment. "You should be inside," Owen said, trying to sound firm, but the words came out softer than intended. "I could say the same to you," Maxwell replied, stepping closer, the rain slicking his hair slightly, giving him a raw, almost vulnerable edge that Owen had never seen before. Maxwell was always in control, always polished. Seeing him slightly disheveled made Owen's chest tighten. "I don't need to hide," Owen said quietly, his words more truth than defiance. "I'm fine out here." Maxwell's gaze softened. "I don't want you hiding." His hand hovered near Owen's, a question without words. Owen swallowed hard. The space between them was charged, and every instinct told him to run, yet every heartbeat rooted him in place. Finally, Owen took the small, terrifying step forward, closing the gap between them. The rain fell around them, but Maxwell's presence made the storm feel like a cocoon. Maxwell's hand found Owen's, the contact brief but electric. For the first time, Owen allowed himself to hope that maybe he didn't have to navigate this city alone. The following weeks were a dance of intimacy and restraint. Maxwell's life demanded perfection, efficiency, and control. Owen's life demanded solitude, discretion, and safety. Yet somehow they carved spaces for each other, moments where the outside world ceased to exist, and it was just the two of them. There were dinners in dimly lit restaurants, where Owen could see the softer side of Maxwell, jokes whispered over wine, quiet laughter, moments of vulnerability hidden beneath the CEO mask. And there were nights on Maxwell's balcony, the skyline stretching infinitely before them, where words were unnecessary. They would simply exist in each other's company, a silent understanding binding them together. Owen learned the subtle ways Maxwell communicated his care. A hand brushing a hair from his face, the gentle pressure of a shoulder against his own in crowded spaces, the small, deliberate texts during late-night hours asking if he had eaten, slept, or simply breathed. Yet, for all the tenderness, tension lingered. Manhattan was relentless, and rumors about powerful CEOs and their private lives were never far from the tabloids. Owen had to remind himself constantly that his feelings were real, not a fleeting distraction caused by Maxwell's magnetic presence. One night, as they walked through the West Village, Owen's hand brushed against Maxwell's intentionally, seeking reassurance. Maxwell responded immediately, intertwining their fingers, holding him close in a gesture that screamed ownership, yet respect. "You're mine," Maxwell whispered, voice low and intimate. "And I don't care what the world thinks." Owen's heart skipped a beat. The words were dangerous, reckless, and thrilling. He had never been claimed before, never had someone look at him with that combination of desire, protectiveness, and reverence. It was intoxicating. Of course, the universe wasn't going to let things stay simple. Maxwell's life as a CEO was filled with challenges, mergers, hostile negotiations, media scrutiny. And in those high-stakes moments, Owen felt powerless. He was an Omega, yes, rare and resilient, but outside Maxwell's world of influence, he was vulnerable. The first real test came during a high-profile gala. Maxwell was expected to negotiate a multi-million-dollar deal, while Owen had been invited only as his guest, ostensibly for appearances. The event was a swirl of glittering gowns, champagne, and whispers of ambition. Maxwell moved through the crowd with precision, every smile and nod calculated. Owen, meanwhile, felt the usual pressure of being an Omega in a room full of predators. Eyes lingered too long, murmurs followed him as he passed, and every glance from the powerful men of New York reminded him how easily he could be swallowed. Maxwell noticed immediately every subtle shift in Owen's posture, every flicker of discomfort did not escape him. He found Owen near a grand staircase, sipping champagne with hands shaking slightly. Maxwell's presence was grounding. He stepped close, lowering his voice so only Owen could hear. "You don't have to play their game," Maxwell murmured, eyes scanning the room with protective precision. "Not tonight." Owen looked up, meeting Maxwell's gaze, and for the first time, he felt truly safe amidst the predators. I don't want to be a burden," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You could never be a burden," Maxwell replied, cupping Owen's face gently. "And if anyone tries to treat you like one, I'll make sure they regret it." The words sent shivers down Owen's spine. Maxwell's protective intensity was both exhilarating and terrifying. Yet, there was no doubt in Owen's mind Maxwell would go to the ends of the earth to ensure his safety, his happiness. As the gala continued, Owen stayed close, finding comfort in Maxwell's steady presence. The two of them navigated the treacherous waters of high society, side by side, a united front that was both understated and unyielding. Despite the challenges, their connection deepened. The city became a backdrop to their evolving story, each street corner, coffee shop, and skyline view carrying memories of laughter, whispered confessions, and stolen kisses. They learned each other's rhythms, Maxwell's precise, commanding pace, Owen's softer, more reflective nature. And in that rhythm they found balance. Owen began to realize that rarity was not a burden, it was a gift. Being a rare Omega meant he could teach Maxwell about patience, empathy, and vulnerability. And Maxwell, in turn, taught Owen about strength, confidence, and the power of owning one's desires unapologetically. One rainy afternoon, Owen found himself at Maxwell's office, the city stretching infinitely through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Maxwell was reviewing documents, his expression intense, but he paused when Owen entered. "You look beautiful," Maxwell said, his voice soft, stripped of its usual authority. Owen blushed, unused to such direct praise from someone like Maxwell. "I'm just me," Owen replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. "And that's enough," Maxwell said, standing and closing the distance between them. More than enough. Their kiss was inevitable, slow and deliberate, a release of tension that had been building for weeks. Maxwell's hands cradled Owen's face, holding him steady as the city roared around them, unnoticed and irrelevant. In that moment, there was only them, two hearts daring to intertwine in a world that often demanded caution and concealment. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Their relationship flourished in stolen moments, quiet confessions, and the occasional high-stakes drama of Manhattan life. The tension of their early interactions evolved into a deep, abiding trust. Maxwell no longer saw Owen as a challenge or a curiosity, saw him as a partner, a confidant, someone who made him feel complete. Owen, for his part, embraced the vulnerability he had once feared. With Maxwell, he could be open, cherished, and safe. The rare Omega no longer needed to hide. He had found someone who valued his rarity, who cherished his presence in a way that transcended mere attraction. One evening, As they stood on the balcony of Maxwell's penthouse, the skyline glittering with 1,000 lights, Owen leaned into Maxwell, resting his head against his chest. "You know," Owen said softly, "I never imagined this for myself. I never imagined us." Maxwell's arms tightened around him. "Neither did I," he admitted, voice low. "But I'm glad we did." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the city pulse with life below. The chaos of Manhattan faded into insignificance, leaving only the warmth, trust, and quiet intimacy they had built together. And in that shared silence, Owen realized that being rare wasn't a burden, it was a blessing. A blessing he would share with Maxwell, in a city that never slept, but where they had found their own quiet corner of love, safety, and endless possibility. The months that followed solidified the bond between Owen and Maxwell. Life in Manhattan, with all its relentless pace, pressures, and expectations, suddenly became a backdrop rather than a threat. Owen no longer felt like a fragile, rare omega trying to survive a predatory world. He felt alive, cherished, and safe. Maxwell had not only noticed him but had chosen him, fully, without hesitation or compromise. It wasn't always easy. Maxwell's world still demanded his attention. Board meetings that lasted hours, media appearances, corporate wars fought behind closed doors. And Owen, despite his love for him, sometimes struggled to navigate that life. There were days when the distance felt tangible, when Maxwell's intensity and obligations seemed almost insurmountable. Yet, every challenge was met with words, with gestures, with reminders that their connection was more than fleeting. It was unbreakable. One late evening, the city glittering beneath them, Owen found himself on the balcony of Maxwell's penthouse again. Rain had left the streets slick and shimmering, the lights reflecting like 1,000 tiny stars. Maxwell leaned against the railing, tall and commanding. But when he turned to Owen, there was no pretense, no facade, only the man Owen had come to love. "You've changed me," Maxwell said quietly, voice carrying the weight of truth. "I thought I understood power, control, and influence. But you've taught me something far more important. How to care without demanding, how to protect without suffocating." Owen's chest tightened. He had never imagined that someone like Maxwell, someone so dominant and driven, could need him in such a profound way. "I didn't mean to," Owen said softly. I just wanted to be myself." "That's exactly why," Maxwell replied, closing the gap between them. His hands rested lightly on Owen's waist, fingers brushing over the fabric of his sweater, grounding him. "Because you are enough, Owen. You always have been." The wind tugged at Owen's hair, carrying with it the scent of rain and the city. He looked up at Maxwell, eyes glistening with emotion, and felt the first real sense of permanence in his life. It wasn't just desire or infatuation, it was trust, respect, and the quiet knowledge that they belonged together. They stood like that for a long moment, the cityscape stretching infinitely before them. Maxwell tilted Owen's chin up gently, capturing his gaze. "I want to make sure you know," Maxwell said, voice low and intimate, "that whatever happens out there, whatever chaos the world throws at us, this remains untouchable." Owen swallowed, heart racing. "I believe you," he whispered. And then, almost instinctively, they leaned into each other, lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a culmination of months of tension, longing, and mutual vulnerability. This time, there were no hesitations, no fears, only a certainty that they had chosen each other fully. Their relationship deepened with each passing day. Maxwell found joy in Owen's quiet strength, the calmness he brought to a life otherwise dictated by numbers and negotiations. Owen, in turn, discovered a side of himself he had never explored, bold, daring, and utterly open to love. There were mornings spent wrapped in each other's arms, watching sunlight filter through the skyscraper windows. Evenings were often filled with soft conversations, shared meals, and walks through the streets of New York, hand in hand, blending their worlds in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. Of course, challenges still arose. Public scrutiny, rumors, and Maxwell's demanding schedule occasionally threatened to intrude on their private life. but each obstacle became an opportunity to reaffirm their bond. Every stolen kiss in the hallway, every whispered promise before bed, every quiet moment together was a statement. They belonged to each other, above all else. One particularly quiet night, Owen sat curled on the sofa, reading, when Maxwell came up behind him. He didn't need words. His presence alone was enough. Maxwell's arms wrapped around Owen, hands tracing gentle patterns on his back. "You're my rarest treasure," Maxwell murmured against his ear. "The one thing I want to protect more fiercely than anything else." Owen rested his head against Maxwell's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "And you're mine," he replied softly. "The strongest man I've ever known, and yet the most gentle with me." It was a quiet acknowledgement of the balance they had found. The world outside could be brutal, chaotic, and demanding, but inside their shared space, they had cultivated safety, love, and understanding. As time passed, Owen began to notice small changes in himself. Confidence, once fragile and tentative, bloomed. He spoke more openly, took risks, and embraced life with a courage he hadn't known he possessed. Maxwell's influence wasn't domineering, it was empowering, guiding him without overshadowing. And Maxwell, for all his power and control, became softer in ways Owen had never imagined. His smiles lingered longer, his touches were gentler, his words more thoughtful. The CEO who could command boardrooms with a glance now sought to understand, to nurture, to love fully. Their favorite moments remained simple: cooking together in the kitchen, teasing each other over burnt garlic bread. Late-night drives through the city, music filling the car and laughter spilling freely. Quiet evenings on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars blink over Manhattan. Each moment was a reaffirmation of the choice they had made: to love fiercely, vulnerably, completely. One night, after a long week filled with Maxwell's business obligations and Owen's own challenges, they found themselves alone in the penthouse. The city hummed softly beneath them, distant and irrelevant. Maxwell pulled Owen close, pressing a hand to his cheek. "I know the world sees me as untouchable," Maxwell said, voice steady. "But you've made me more human than I've ever been." Owen smiled softly, eyes glistening. "And you've made me braver than I ever thought I could be." Maxwell leaned in, their foreheads touching, sharing the quiet intimacy of a bond built on trust and understanding. "No matter what comes next, Owen, I promise. We'll face it together," Owen finished, a soft certainty in his voice. Their lips met again, slow and unhurried. A kiss that encapsulated months of longing, tension, and eventual surrender to love. In that embrace, they found not only desire but solace, a shared heartbeat in the chaotic rhythm of the city around them. The rare Omega and the powerful CEO had become more than themselves. They were partners, lovers, and confidants. Manhattan, with its endless noise, ambition, and unpredictability, had transformed from a place of fear into a canvas for their love story, a testament to vulnerability, courage, and the rare beauty of connection. Owen no longer worried about being overshadowed or dismissed. Maxwell no longer feared losing control over his meticulously curated world. Together, they navigated both the extraordinary and the mundane, creating a life defined not by power or rarity alone, but by mutual respect, tenderness, and unwavering affection. The story of Owen Carter and Maxwell Hayes became one of quiet triumph. The triumph of love over fear, intimacy over isolation, and trust over doubt. And as they stood together on the balcony one final evening in their ongoing journey, the skyline aglow with the golden light of sunset, Owen rested against Maxwell, feeling the warmth of a life finally lived without pretense or reservation. "Thank you," Owen whispered, voice full of emotion, "for seeing me." Maxwell's arms tightened around him. "No, thank you," he replied, "for letting me in." The city stretched infinitely before them, but their world had narrowed to the space between their hands, the brush of their lips, the quiet certainty of their hearts. Rare or powerful, alpha or omega no longer mattered. They had each other, and that was enough. In the end, Manhattan, with all its chaos and grandeur, had given them exactly what they needed: a love that was fearless, tender, and enduring. And as the night fell, Owen and Maxwell held each other close, knowing that no matter what storms came, they would always find calm, warmth, and belonging in one another. The rare Omega had found not just a powerful alpha, but a partner. The CEO had found not just a captivating Omega, but a soulmate. And together, they faced the future hand in hand, heart in heart, unstoppable and unbroken. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.